Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. He shoved the cashier hard enough to make her stumble. My name is Marissa, and I am 32, and I froze. Our son stared up at him like it was a trick. The line went quiet and my throat tightened. The cashier caught herself and forced a small smile. She lifted her hands like she wanted peace. My husband leaned in and pointed at the register. His finger shook like he was proud of it. A guy behind us muttered something under his breath. My husband snapped his head and squared his shoulders. I stepped between them without thinking, which was stupid. I could feel how fast this could get ugly. The cashier tried to ring us up again with shaky hands. My husband slid our items forward like he owned the place. I heard my own laugh come out thin and wrong. Have you ever heard yourself lie in real time? Babe, chill. I touched his arm like a warning. He yanked away and kept his eyes on her. You messing with me or what? His voice got sharp. She blinked fast and I saw panic land. Our son tugged my sleeve and whispered my name. I looked down and his face was blank. That blank look hit me worse than the shove. Kids copy what keeps them safe, right? The cashier offered a discount like a bribe. My husband nodded once like she finally learned. I wanted to say no and I did not. That's when shame started to stick to me. A manager hurried over with a forced smile. He asked if everything was okay with too much cheer. My husband lifted his chin and stared him down. I watched the manager's smile crack at the edges. We're fine, I pushed the words out fast. The manager glanced at the cashier, then at our son. He took a half step back like he had a plan. His hand slid toward the phone on his belt. My husband noticed and laughed once, loud and mean. He leaned closer to the manager's face. Call someone and see what happens. His jaw worked. My stomach dropped because he sounded certain. I grabbed the receipt the moment it printed. My hands shook and I hated that he saw. He tossed the bag at me like I was staff. Our son flinched when it hit my hip. We walked out and I did that fake fast walk. The manager followed 2 steps behind us. I could hear him talking low into his mic. I did not turn around because I was afraid. Outside, my husband kicked the cart with his boot. The cart clanged and our son jumped. My husband smiled at him like it was funny. That smile felt like a warning I ignored before. In the car, he slammed the door and exhaled hard. Our son climbed into his seat without a word. I buckled him with hands that would not steady. My husband watched us in the mirror the whole time. Why did you do that? I kept my voice low. He started the engine and gripped the wheel. She disrespected me, he spoke like it solved everything. I stared at his knuckles and thought about bruises. I tried again and my voice cracked on the second word. He rolled his eyes like I was being dramatic. Don't start, he tapped the wheel in a fast rhythm. That tapping made my skin crawl for no reason. Our son cleared his throat like a tiny adult. Dad, you pushed her, his voice sounded careful. My husband glanced back and smiled at him. Sometimes people need a lesson. I waited for my son to argue or cry. He did not do either, which scared me more. He nodded once like he understood the rules. I saw the moment he chose his side. I pulled out my phone and pretended to check messages. Really, I was checking my own pulse with my thumb. My husband kept driving like nothing happened. And I kept wondering what else he did when I was not there. My screen lit up and I answered on the first ring. A school secretary spoke fast and kept clearing her throat. Are you the parent for pickup? Her tone went tight. I asked what happened and she paused too long. I drove there with one hand clenched on the wheel. I kept picturing our son's face from the store. In my head I tried to soften it, stress, bad day. That excuse tasted cheap the whole drive. In the office, a staff member led me down a hallway. She walked ahead like she did not want to watch. At the door she hesitated, then tapped twice. Inside I heard raised voices cut off mid-sentence. He stood near a chair with his arms crossed. A woman I did not know held her keys like a weapon. Our son sat rigid, eyes locked on the floor. Nobody looked surprised to see me, which felt worse. The woman pointed at him and her hands shook. He lunged at my car, her voice cracked on car. He lifted both palms like he was the calm one. I watched his mouth form that familiar, really face. A staff member slid between them and raised a hand. Parking line escalated, she spoke like a warning label. I asked where our son was when it started. The staff member glanced at him, then away again. He made a short laugh and tilted his head. She tried to cut, he spoke like that was the whole story. I asked why the office called me and not him. His eyes flicked to my purse like he was counting exits. The woman stepped closer and jabbed a finger toward his chest. You banged my window with a ring on, she looked furious. He glanced at his hand and flexed his fingers once. That tiny motion told me he remembered every second. Our son finally looked up and met my eyes. His lips parted like he wanted to help me. Then he shut his mouth and swallowed hard. I felt my patience snap quiet and clean. Did you scare her? I kept my voice low. He turned his head toward our son like a coach. Tell Mom what you saw, his tone sounded practiced. Our son stared at his shoes like they were instructions. The staff member asked everyone to leave the room. I guided our son out first and kept my hand steady. In the hallway, he leaned into my side without speaking. Behind us, the office door clicked shut like a lock. Outside, he tried to talk like nothing happened. He walked beside me and matched my pace. People are getting soft, he shook his head once. I kept my eyes forward because I did not trust mine. In the car, our son buckled himself too carefully. He pressed his knees together like he was bracing. I asked if he was okay and he nodded too quick. That nod felt like a lie he learned from us. My phone buzzed again before we hit the main road. Unknown number, no name, no preview text. Just a single file with a timestamp and nothing else. My thumb hovered over it like it might burn. I waited until we got home before opening it. I told myself I was being smart, not scared. I stepped into the kitchen and turned the volume down. Then the video started and I stopped breathing. It showed the parking line from someone else's dashboard. His body filled the frame close enough to blur. He leaned toward the window and hit the glass twice. The sound came through even with the volume low. The woman filming screamed something I could not make out. He pointed at her face and mouthed words I knew anyway. He looked proud like he was teaching a lesson. My hand started shaking so hard the screen rattled. I replayed it and forced myself to keep watching. I wanted to catch the part that proved it was not that bad. There was no part like that. Every second made him look more certain. He walked in while the clip was still playing. He glanced at my phone and did not flinch. He set his keys down and stared at the screen. Then he looked at me like I was the problem. What is that? My voice sounded smaller than I meant. He shrugged and rolled his shoulders once. Someone's trying to mess with us. His eyes stayed flat. My throat tightened because he never asked who sent it. Our son stood in the doorway and watched us both. He did not ask questions, which scared me again. He just waited like he needed permission to breathe. I realized he was learning which moods to survive. I tried to keep my tone normal and failed anyway. Do you hear yourself? I tapped the phone screen with one finger. He stepped closer and lowered his voice on purpose. Drop it, the words landed like a hand on my neck. I nodded even though I did not agree. I hate that part of me, I really do. I turned the screen off and put the phone away. Then another notification hit, same number, another file still silent. The second file hit my phone before I could breathe again. He reached for it fast and I pulled back. His eyes stayed on mine like a test. Give it here, his hand hovered waiting. I tucked the phone behind my back like a teenager. That move embarrassed me and still I did it. What is this? I kept my voice low, too controlled. He smiled like I proved his point. He took one step closer and lowered his chin. Someone's stirring drama, he spread his hands innocent. I wanted to believe that so badly it hurt. Then he tried to grab it again. I twisted away and hit play with my thumb. The video showed him outside the school office door. He paced with tight shoulders and kept muttering at someone. The camera caught him spitting on the ground near a bench. My face went hot and I paused it mid-frame. That spit felt worse than yelling, if that makes sense. He watched me watch it and never looked away. See, he nodded once like he won. I replayed it and forced myself not to flinch. You know that sick moment when your brain bargains for you? I kept searching for a missing piece that excused him. All I found was his posture, steady and ready. Why are people recording you? My words came out clipped. He leaned on the counter and tapped his nails. Because I stand up for us, his tone sounded rehearsed. I stared at his mouth and felt a new kind of fear. Our son walked in and froze when he saw my face. He glanced at his dad, then at me, then down. My husband snapped his fingers once, like calling a dog. Go wash up, our son turned without a sound. I hated that I obeyed the rhythm of his house. I swallowed my questions and nodded like a calm wife. Sincerity matters, right? And mine was already gone. He noticed anyway and his smile got sharper. Are you threatening people now? I asked, finally blunt. He let out a short laugh and shook his head. Stop acting dramatic, he pointed at my phone. That's bait, his finger stayed pointed too long. I walked past him and kept the phone in my pocket. My legs felt stiff like they belonged to somebody else. I rinsed a plate I did not care about. He watched me from the doorway, quiet and waiting. At dinner he ate like a normal man with a normal day. He even asked our son about homework with a light voice. I stared at his hands and kept counting the beats. Every time he smiled, our son smiled back. When our son went to bed, I did not follow. I sat on the couch and listened for footsteps. My husband turned on the TV like a shield. I realized he was waiting for me to surrender. I opened my phone again and the number was blocked. My chest felt tight and my palms felt slick. I should have felt relief, but I felt hunted. What kind of person sends proof like a gift? He walked over and held out his hand, patient. Let me handle it, his voice softened on purpose. I shook my head and his eyes hardened fast. The softness vanished like it was never real. He turned and went to the bedroom without another word. I stayed on the couch because I could not follow. I told myself it was my choice, not fear. That lie sat beside me all night. Around midnight his work phone buzzed on the coffee table. I stared at it like it was a live wire. I know it was wrong and I still reached. My thumb hovered and my heart started pounding. The screen showed a new email banner from his office. The subject line was short and ugly, final warning. My mouth went dry and my vision narrowed. I tapped it before I could talk myself out of it. The message loaded and I saw bullet points. Words like conduct and complaints jumped off the page. I scrolled and saw a date from last week. He was already on thin ice before the parking lot. I heard the bedroom door creak behind me. I locked the phone screen and sat very still. He stood there in the hall, watching my hands. Can't sleep, his voice sounded sweet, almost playful. I lifted my chin and met his eyes anyway. Your job sent you a final warning, my voice shook once. He did not deny it, not even for a second. He just smiled and stepped closer, like I handed him the knife. I walked into his office lobby and asked for his supervisor. The receptionist blinked like I broke a rule. I kept my voice steady and held my ground. Her hand slid under the desk toward a button. A security guard drifted closer and watched my hands. I raised both palms and nodded like I understood. I'm not here to start anything, my mouth went dry. The guard still stayed between me and the hallway. The receptionist made a call and kept her eyes down. A minute later a man in a badge came out fast. He scanned my face, then glanced behind me. Follow me, he did not sound glad. He led me past a few doors without looking back. I kept my steps even and tried not to rush. My heart thumped hard enough to feel in my teeth. At the end he stopped and knocked once. A woman opened the door and sized me up. She wore an HR badge and a tired expression. She stepped aside and motioned me in. The man left like he was relieved. The HR woman closed the door and faced me square. Are you safe at home? The question came out blunt. I almost laughed because it sounded unreal. I answered too fast, which made it worse. She pulled a chair out with one hand and sat too. I can't discuss employee records, she held my gaze anyway. I nodded and waited because I knew that line. Then she sighed and slid a folder toward me. My hands hovered above it for a second. I felt like touching it meant choosing a side. I opened it anyway and my fingers went numb. The first page had a complaint with a date. I read the words twice because my brain stalled. It described a call to a grieving spouse after midnight. It said he demanded payment and mocked her crying. My throat tightened and my eyes burned. The next page had a different name and same pattern. Late call, harsh tone, threats about ruined credit. I kept flipping and the pages kept matching. Each one ended with customer felt terror in plain text. I looked up and the HR woman nodded once. We have recordings, her voice stayed careful. She tapped the folder with 2 fingers like a warning. I'm asking you to hear one, she waited. She pressed a button on a small speaker and set it down. His voice filled the room, calm and smooth. Ma'am, I'm calling from the church, the words hit hard. My skin prickled because it sounded like a costume. The woman on the recording begged and kept apologizing. He cut her off and spoke over her sobs. You don't want to disappoint God tonight, he leaned into the word God. I covered my mouth because I almost made a sound. The HR woman. And stopped the audio and watched me. I shook my head like that could erase it. Why would he say that? My voice cracked on the last word. She slid 1 page forward without speaking. It was a typed note from a coworker with initials at the bottom. It said he used a fake title to gain trust. It said he bragged about it in the break room. My hands clenched into fists on my lap. I flipped to the last page and my stomach turned. There was a script with a signature line. His name sat above pastor like it belonged there. I stared until the letters stopped looking real. You told me you need a happy family, I heard myself whisper. The HR woman did not react, just listened. That's all I asked for, my voice went thin and shaky. She nodded again like she had heard worse. She leaned forward and lowered her voice on purpose. We are terminating him, the sentence landed clean. We also have police reports in progress, her eyes stayed on mine. My chest tightened because I pictured our front door. I stood up too fast and the chair scraped loud. The HR woman rose too and kept space between us. She pushed a card toward me with 2 fingers. Call this number if he escalates, the word escalates chilled me. I slid the folder back like it was poison. She shook her head and pushed it toward me again. You may need it, her tone turned firm. I took it because refusing felt like denial. I walked out with the folder pressed against my ribs. The security guard watched me like he expected a scene. I kept my face blank and my pace measured. Outside, my hands started trembling in full view. I sat in my car and stared at the folder on my lap. I wanted to rip it up and pretend none existed. Instead, I opened it again and read one more complaint. At the bottom, a widow wrote, he knew my husband's name. My breathing went shallow and fast. He did not just bully strangers in public. He hunted weak people in private and called it work. And I had to go home and face him anyway. I walked in and he reached for the folder like it was his. I kept it against my chest and stepped back. His eyes dropped to the HR card and his jaw tightened. Where did you get that? His voice went flat, dangerously calm. He tried to laugh and it came out clipped. He leaned closer and angled his body toward the hall. That angle mattered because our son was down that way. I felt my pulse jump because he was already positioning. Give me the folder, his hand stayed open like a demand. I shook my head and his nostrils flared. He swallowed hard and forced a friendly tone. Let's talk like adults, the switch flipped too fast. I held the folder higher so he could not snatch it. My arm ached but I did not lower it. You lied at work, the words came out sharper than planned. He blinked once, then smiled like I misheard everything. He lifted both hands and let them drop slowly. You went snooping, he nodded toward the kitchen like I was messy. I wanted to argue the details and that was the trap. So I asked one thing, did you pretend to be a pastor? His face froze for half a second, then smoothed over. He tilted his head and gave a soft laugh. People will believe anything when they're desperate. That sentence hit harder than a confession because it sounded proud. I stepped back again and bumped the wall with my shoulder. He noticed and moved closer, cutting off my path. I lifted the folder like a shield and hated myself for it. He lowered his voice and used my name like honey. You're making this bigger than it is, he pointed at the folder. Those people owed money, he shrugged like it was simple. I stared at his mouth and realized he felt zero shame. And in that second I knew the old version of him was gone. From the hallway our son asked if dinner was ready. My husband called back with a cheerful voice. Almost buddy, he looked at me while he said it. That split voice made my skin crawl, 2 faces at once. I took one step toward the hall and he mirrored me. He was not touching me but he was staring me. I raised my palm at him like stop, then kept moving anyway. He followed close enough that I could feel his breath. In our son's room, he sat on the edge of the bed. He held a book open and waited like he was being evaluated. My husband leaned on the doorframe and smiled at him. "Show Mom your manners." The command sounded casual, which was worse. Our son looked at me and forced eye contact. He smiled without warmth and sat very still. I swallowed the urge to cry because it would scare him. Have you ever watched a kid perform safety like a school play? I crouched and brushed hair off his forehead with one finger. "Grab your shoes." My voice came out steady somehow. My husband laughed under his breath and shook his head. "Where do you think you're going?" He blocked the doorway with his shoulder. I stood up and kept my hands visible. "I'm taking him for the night." I kept my tone boring. My husband stared at our son like he was a referee. "Tell her you want to stay." His eyes dared him to choose. Our son's lips parted, then closed again. He looked at me, then looked at his dad's shoes. He whispered, "I want to go." The words came out thin. My husband's face tightened like he just lost something expensive. He stepped into the room and shut the door behind him. The click sounded loud in the small space. He leaned down to our son's height and smiled again. "That's not what you mean." His voice turned sweet, which scared me most. I put myself between them without thinking. My husband straightened and stared at me like I was daring him. "You're poisoning him." He spoke like he believed it. I answered, "You already did," and watched his eyes go cold. He moved around me and opened the dresser drawer hard. He yanked out a small stack of cash and waved it. "Look what you'll lose." He tossed it onto the bed. Our son flinched at the movement, and that flinch decided everything. I grabbed our son's hoodie and his shoes. I did not pack properly, I just grabbed what mattered. My husband stood still and watched like a hunter waiting. "You walk out, don't come back." He sounded sure I would fold. I pulled my phone out and texted my sister 2 words. "Need you." My hands were steady now, which felt unreal. My husband saw the screen and his mouth twitched, annoyed, not worried. He reached for my wrist and stopped short of touching me. He changed his mind mid-motion and pointed instead. "Go ahead." He stepped aside like he was generous. I knew that was theater, and I still took the opening. We moved down the hall with our son close to my hip. My husband followed behind us at an easy pace. He started talking about bills and schedules like a normal spouse. That normal talk made me feel dizzy, like I was the crazy one. At the front door, he leaned against the frame and folded his arms. "Tomorrow you'll apologize." He nodded once like it was inevitable. I reached for the knob and my hand trembled anyway. He saw it and smiled because he still thought he owned the moment. My sister's car pulled up and the headlights flashed across the window. My husband's head turned toward the light and his expression shifted. He stepped back 2 inches, which was all I needed. I opened the door and the cold air hit my face like a slap. I got our son into the car without looking back. My sister asked one question with her eyes and I shook my head. I climbed in and locked the door with a hard click. Through the glass I saw my husband standing in the doorway, still smiling. I held my phone up so he could see the HR card. I did not speak, I just let him read it. He lifted his hand and gave a small wave. Then he shut the door and threw the deadbolt, slow, loud, final. As we pulled away, our son asked if we were in trouble. I told him no, my voice cracked on the single word. In the side mirror I saw the porch light turn off. And I realized he was not chasing us, he was planning.